This is Canon Fodder, episode 30, live from the Wild Wild West. And it is wild indeed. So, of course, I decided to have my friend Max Teller from WBS Apparel. Max, how we doing?
Everything's good, TR. Thanks for having me on.
I stumbled through that, but I think I made it, so we won't have to do another take. I know you from, and we were just talking about this, the rose-colored glasses. That's primarily how I knew about you guys when the Civil War trailer came out. But how did WBS start before we kind of get into our book here?
Sure thing. Well, last year, Chet and myself started the business. We kind of had a light bulb moment when we made the Pepe hats, and we did it for a white boy summer party that we threw last year. And we were kind of out on the town having a good time, and all of these, totally normal people who have no idea what the dissonant right or anything like that is, came up to us, say, "That frogman on your hat is funny. I would buy that." And then we kind of look at each other, have that light bulb moment. Hey, this is a real thing. And then we did a little bit of research and saw that most of podcasters and guys in our sphere that do merchandise, they do it through print on demand companies and very low quality, low effort kind of thing. So we very quickly realized that we had a lot of room to operate, and there was certainly an uncaptured market to tap into.
Oh, most definitely. And friend of the show, Dan Baltic, he has his line of merch through you guys, the Old Glory Club as well. I know that there were talks for a double dealer T-shirt at one point, but we're not there yet.
We'll get there.
We're gonna get there. Oh yeah, most definitely. And I know you guys make high quality stuff, so definitely if you're out there and you need a base clothier, go to WBS Apparel.
Yeah.
So this week, and I was surprised that you picked this book, though I shouldn't be, because it's probably the most read novel in our sphere. It's certainly one of the best novels of the 20th century rather. And it had a profound effect on me, and I'm guessing it had one on you as well. And anybody out there who's listening who's read it will probably share that experience with us. You picked McCarthy's Blood Meridian. So let's get into that. Why Blood Meridian? I guess we can go why McCarthy, and then more specifically, why Blood Meridian.
My first exposure to him was The Road, and I've read all of his novels, and the latest one I've read was Blood Meridian, because I help run a based books group book club that gets together once a month, and we talk out a book that we all read together. And Blood Meridian was, I think, 3-4 months ago was Blood Meridian for us. And some people enjoyed it, some people didn't, but everyone acknowledged that it was interesting, impactful, difficult book. So not all good books are easy, as you know, right?
Oh, and I would say that even the quote unquote easy good books, there's just when you have a good piece of literature, it's as deep as you want to go with it, right? Like even some scriptures, like the Gospels, are pretty straightforward, right? Just narrative wise, they're not. Jesus spoke in simple language that anyone could understand. He spoke in parable, which people could, get a surface level view of, and he did that very intentionally. So, and I only bring that up because what is a novel but a very long parable, right? Or at least the attempt at one. So yeah, you can go as deep as you want with a very simple story, but what McCarthy's doing in Blood Meridian is so bare bones, and and he did that very intentionally. It's so sparse, much like the desert that the men are crossing, that it leads, you have to read a lot into it.
Even the writing style, I find it interesting how he can vary his writing through his different works. This one, like you said, is very bare bones, very run on, I would say, which makes it difficult. I reread it recently before the pod, and you do have to kind of go over it a couple of times through, especially different sections, and it's just, and I think that's him trying to convey the sort of illiteracy of the people we're dealing with too, in my opinion, is I think that's a part of that, and definitely thematic with the Southwest, like you just said.
So, and I brought up earlier that it's very bare bones, and McCarthy did this intentionally. This might be apocryphal, but I believe when he was writing this novel, he first wrote it like you would a standard novel, and then the editing process, which took him many years, he stripped down every sentence like kind of a vulture, trying to get every bit of meat and marrow off of it until it was just like this sun bleached skeleton, right? And that's what he was doing in the editing process. So there was in the first draft, there was more about the kid. He had a name. You knew he was from Tennessee, like more explicitly. And McCarthy decided, okay, I'm going to take everything. I'm going to trim the fat so much that he is emaciated. And by he, I mean the book. Because this book is also based on another work. It is based on the autobiography of a man who lived through these times, covered actually on the Tukey's Mag channel, which we'll link with my friend the Prudentialist. They do like 4 hours on it. It's really funny. But yeah, and the totally different tone, right? This guy, he kind of writes his memoir as like a swashbuckling adventure, right? You can almost like he goes to bed with many ladies, he kills like 16 dudes, but he still tries to be a good man. He gives himself a good treatment here, and I believe that's who the kid is based on. And McCarthy just kind of does away with any sort of romanticism.
I noticed that as well. It's most westerns, whether it be a Clint Eastwood or any more classic novel about the subject, usually does have a sense of adventurism, positivity, even if there is violence and there is a bit of chaos. There seems to be kind of a tongue-in-cheek nature to it, and this is the most visceral novel I've ever read. It is like you said, it's not that fun call to adventure and seducing the ladies. There's everything in here is about.
We can call some of that forced seduction if we want to be coy with our language.
Yeah, everything is about the deep, bare bones nature of humanity and all of its warts.
So I want to expand on that because I agree with you, but what makes it so compelling? Why can't you put it down? Because I found myself disgusted at some points, but also acknowledging that I was holding something beautiful and trying to hold those two ideas in my mind at the same time. That something awful and brutal and disgusting can also be beautiful, threw me for a loop.
It's kind of gross at parts, right? It describes, sodomy and the killing of children, the list goes on. And I did kind of have to take breaks.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
especially
you can't get through it in one read or in one sit down.
No way. The first time I read it, I took several breaks. We had to extend the meeting date for the book because it was we kept all right. I'm here at this point. Give me another couple weeks. or whatever. But yeah, it is. There's something fascinating about it in that you can see why he is. Um, Cormac McCarthy is the quintessential American writer, as they say, and that you can't find something like this anywhere else. I'm sure there's people that have tried to replicate it, but there's something dark here. There's a darkness inside of the writer. Like, who else could produce something like this? I believe I read as well, in terms of the mythology with the writing of the book, that he stayed in a very isolated area of the Southwest while he was writing it as well. So I imagine he made a lot of observations about the nature of living there and the nature of the wildlife there while he was.
So I was on a walk this morning, and I was thinking about how I wanted to tackle the subject of Blood Meridian, and a stupid thought came to my head. Right, I thought, wow, McCarthy, especially with all the discourse around this series of video games and the recent TV adaptation, I thought McCarthy would really enjoy specifically Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. And he was
Yeah.
alive for both of them, and I doubt he played any video games at all. But
Yeah, he was from what I understand, he was very difficult to get in touch with in general. I think he gave some interviews at times, but
I mean, the Oprah interview was his most famous interview probably, and also the like, it was this disaster because she would just like ask him, like, well, you were poor for so long, how did you exist being poor? And he's like, being poor is kind of easy.
Yeah.
He's a man of very few words, but if you get him talking about anything except for writing, he's more animated and he gets more excited about it. Especially he did a couple lectures, I think, at the Santa Fe Institute, which is like the place that he liked to be more than anywhere else, and you get a sense of the man more so than these kind of cheesy Hollywood
cliches.
Yeah.
There's always, with great writers, of course, there's Cormac McCarthy the writer, and then there's Cormac McCarthy the man, right? And my impression of him is that this is a man who's definitely had interesting life experiences, for certain.
So, and the only reason I brought up Fallout before, and I'll let the point die, because I can already kind of, in the back of my mind, I have this like, oh man, what are you doing? You're like bringing down McCarthy to the level of stupid video game. But that series is dealing with what we can all, or what it thinks is the eventual nuclear destruction of Earth, right? And I believe, and McCarthy, I don't know when this happened in his life, but he did become very fatalistic, right? Especially, you read The Road, even his early stuff, The Outer Dark is pretty rough. The Orchard Keeper, Child of God, all of them have a very bleak worldview. And when you look, especially at the time of Blood Meridian's release, this is like the second height of the Cold War, right?
Yeah.
Reagan is trying to be the madman. He's trying to be an actual cowboy with a nuclear button, right?
Yeah.
And I have to think that McCarthy is seeing all this around him. He already believes that human hands are going to end the world. So he writes this novel trying to explain how we got here, right? And he comes up with it like, yeah, this has been the American, and not even American, right? This has been the human stain, right? Is seeking our own self-destruction. It's just that in the American West, and what was built upon all the bones and the death of the Old West became like this apex death machine that is modern America.
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly what you're referencing with the Fallout thing, because this is truly an apocalyptic world that we're reading in Blood Meridian. There are government agents, there are soldiers, there are sheriffs, but it doesn't seem like they're able to maintain any level of order in this society. And it's definitely very bleak, as you said. And maybe we shouldn't get to the ending yet, but that was something I thought of when you're bringing up just kind of the endings of all of his books are a bit bleak, are they not? I mean,
yeah. I mean, that's you can say The Road is probably his least bleak book in terms of ending. The Border trilogy is less bleak than his other work, but otherwise, yeah, he just goes for sort of the gut punch, the McCarthy does not pull his punches at the end.
You know what I love about his works is, I'm thinking out loud here, but I think it's that there's so many people that try to be deconstructionist in their works, and that kind of is what he's doing, but it is its own work. It's not just the anti-hero. Is it Unforgiven? Is that Clint
Yes.
Eastwood's
Yeah.
deconstruction? That one comes off like a little too deconstructionist. Like it's just the anti Clint Eastwood movie, right?
I can't help but love it.
I know, I like it too, but it is kind of too on the nose in that regard, in my opinion. But
this novel is, and I don't know if you know Astral. He just did an episode with me on Crime and Punishment, but he has this awesome essay on Blood Meridian, and I'll make sure to link that in below in the show notes. But that has influenced my thinking about this book a lot. Have you read it by chance?
I've not. I'll be sure to after this.
Let me see if I can. I'm not going to pull it up right now because I don't want to create, just dead air.
I really liked that. By the way, in terms of kind of the visceral, primitive nature of the book, I do like the judge monologue that's famous, even though it's the most frequently referenced. There are monologues in the book, and there's other interesting monologues, but this one stays in your memory in terms of the one where when he's on the rock, or maybe it's when they're around the campfire and he talks about war. War was always here.
Yes. War was always here, waiting for its great practitioner to arrive. And after us, there will still be war. And I guess with the I'm gonna keep bringing up Fallout because it's just on the brain. But that every Fallout game starts with war. War never changes. And it's like this. Definitely, I think McCarthy influenced those games, right?
Oh,
but
absolutely.
If we end up getting a sort of authorized biography later, now that he's dead and buried, and it turned out that he had like an old Gateway computer in like the 90s, and he played Fallout on it once, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'd also probably laugh my ass off.
Yeah. I didn't play the original ones, to be honest. I played some other.
They're rougher and grittier.
I've heard they're really good though. I played Fallout 3 until the Xbox 360 controller broke. Like I played that all the time. Love that one. Love New Vegas as well. But I've heard the other ones are very deep. And I would say the weakness of Fallout 3 is probably the main storyline with the father and everything. And
that's the truth, is that they're poorly written, which is sad because it's set in such a good world. But anyway, so Blood Meridian, and I found the Astral post, and it's actually locked for paid subscribers. So definitely go subscribe to Astral to get the full essay. It's well worth your time. Have you read Moby Dick?
No, I haven't.
That's all right. I mean, not, a lot of people haven't. I've tried twice, and life got in the way both times. Unfortunately,
Isn't it really long?
It is a very long book, yes,
Yeah.
but it's thematically very similar. You could say that Ahab himself is a judge-like figure. McCarthy is borrowing a lot of language and a lot of his, I guess the language that he uses to establish the mood of Blood Meridian is taken right out of Melville. Have you read Paradise Lost?
No, I've not.
Okay. Paradise Lost also is, these two books and the King James Bible are like the fathers and grandfathers of Blood Meridian, right? And they're all very similar stories because Melville is also really influenced by the King James Bible and by Paradise Lost, right? Paradise Lost is obviously really influenced by the King James Bible. King James Bible is influenced by God himself. So it's all very much the same story, and it's the story, let's say, of temptation, right? Where Satan in Paradise Lost, he's very clearly trying to tempt man through sexual immorality, right? Through eating the forbidden fruit of good and evil,
Mm-hmm.
Or of the knowledge of good and evil, rather, right? With Herman Melville and Moby Dick, you can say that the temptation is adventure and glory, right? Uh, and Ahab sort of uses his charisma to send his crew to their deaths to chase this white whale, this unkillable thing, right? This leviathan of the deep. And in Blood Meridian, the temptation comes through war and bloodlust.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that brief adventure type, whatever, call to adventure, hero's journey, right? But at very surface level and almost not believable. And you can see that none of the Glanton gang has illusions or delusions rather of grandeur about what they're doing, right? They're just strictly in it for the money and in it because they kind of get off on the killing, and the kid really likes the violence, right?
Yeah.
So the judge using, if we believe that the judge is the manifestation of Satan, which I think we can, right? His temptation is that yes, you can just kill these nameless, faceless savages forever, right?
The judge is a force of nature, and maybe if he's not Satan, which he probably is, violence is probably the metaphor. I love the scene where they're the gang's on their last legs. That happened many times. They were able to survive a lot of different circumstances, but the one where the Apaches were following them and he was able to lead them to the volcanic material, and then he was able to urinate on it to make gunpowder for them. So that it seems a bit mystical, right? It was, I mean, this did happen throughout history. Like Cortez was able to gain gunpowder from a volcano in Mexico during his attack on the Aztecs. So it's not beyond belief, but it is kind of this mystical force that he's able to deliver to them. He's essentially able to deliver magic to them to save them from the savages, right?
Well, and it's funny too because that scene is directly referencing or alluding to Paradise Lost and the speech that Satan gives to the demons in Pandemonium, right? Where he kind of the famous line, "It is better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven," right?
Yeah.
That uh, the language that McCarthy's using in that scene with the judge, creating gunpowder and kind of doing this perverse alchemy is straight out of Paradise Lost. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, it can't be mystical, right? Like him urinating on the material. He just adds another visceral, gross, animalistic nature to it. It's almost like they are signing a deal with the devil, right? By participating in this and continuing on with him. And it's almost, it does a good job of capturing the seduction, like you talked about. There's a common theme throughout the book of they just find themselves willed into doing these things without necessarily thinking about them. And there's always that, the funny cliche, I was just following orders kind of thing in Nuremberg. But I mean, that's man is a hierarchical creature, right? We tend to follow who we choose as a leader, whether we directly always agree with their morality or not.
And what's interesting about the judge in that case, right? Because you brought up, the words mystical and magical, and I think you're right, because the judge is the opposite of that, right? He is trying to expunge mysticism and magic from the world. He is a strict materialist. He has that amazing famous line, anything that exists without my knowledge exists without my consent. He is constantly drawing and categorizing and discovering new plants and taking samples, and he's very scientific about the way that he does all of these things. Right? He's the proto, well, actually, like Mahekan science, wholesome chungus liberal atheist who wants to turn on the CERN big hadron collider to try and see if we can make a black hole happen on Earth, because wouldn't that be great? He has no room for the transcendent, because the transcendent is beyond, not only beyond his grasp and understanding, but also just beyond his nature. Anything that is transcendent from right here and right now, he cannot corrupt. So therefore, he must try to destroy it, much like, Satan.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting to see. Let's see. They get the gunpowder and they're able to fight off the natives and everything as well. And then they got the scalps of the people they were actually looking for, and weren't they celebrated? They were celebrated in the village that came in.
Yes, they were celebrated in the village, right? This is also where Holden. I want to try and keep this friendly for the internet and for where I want to post this. This is where Holden has forced intimacy with the young village girl.
Yeah. And he's defiling this place that's happy for what they did. So an interesting point one of my friends made when we had a little book club meeting about this is, if you kind of look at it, a lot of these people got their karma. They got kind of was coming to them, even though that's terrible that the crew and the judge is doing all of these things, but they kind of did open Pandora's box.
Oh, definitely.
Let's go. These natives are bothering us. Let's go. Yeah, go kill them all for us. Go scalp them, and then they reap what they sow. Right.
Yes.
And then the force of nature comes for them.
Very reminiscent of say, like a Custer and his last stand. Right. The idea of manifest destiny is, it's implicitly bloody and it is implicitly savage, right? And and that's the idea of the Western in general, is that the frontiersman, the cowboy, lives on the edge between civilization and savagery, right? Between gardens and deserts, right? And he is that edge. He is bringing civilization to an uncivilized place, but he is doing so by uncivilized means, right? So that he can no longer exist in civilization and in society. And in fact, he has more in common with the savage that he is out to destroy than he does with his own people, right? So by the end, the judge is creating this perfect killing machine, right? And I think Astral, I'm going to keep mentioning his essay because it really is that good. That the gang gets so adept and so good at the killing that the judge has to then destroy it because there's no longer room for cowboys and for this sort of savagery, right? The end of the novel, where you see the fences being put up and the West being closed, the territories being formed in the states, and people finding this now empty land, right? Where there was, I mean, America was almost always empty, right?
Yeah.
The native populations, they weren't living in like these giant cities like we have today,
It's
right?
still empty to a
To a
large degree
Yeah,
as
to a
well.
large
Yeah.
degree, yeah. And hopefully we can kind of keep it that way, especially with national parks and everything. People are always trying to develop that sort of land, and they kind of don't want that. But um, yeah, hopefully we can kind of keep it that empty. But people are coming, and they're riding in their wagons across the country, across this vast land, trying to find a place that they can stake their claim, and not realizing, and more so the second wave, right after the West is closed, and that first wave who has to experience the violence, and I'll get to them, right? But there is they're bringing civilization with them. Railroads are being built, right? Towns are becoming more established. You'll have these mining towns that will be abandoned as soon as the railway station goes somewhere else. Uh, Land starts actually having value, right? So people are speculating, and all sorts of industry is moving out west from the east, right? And sort of inland from like California and like San Francisco and those larger cities there, right? So no longer can we accept the gunslinger, the savage white man who has done all this on the behalf of manifest destiny, but he has since lost his usefulness. Does that make sense, or did I ramble too
Oh
much?
no, absolutely. Isn't that the general theme? Not that we have to get into No Country for Old Men, but I'm pretty sure the final word in No Country for Old Men is the cowboy's dead. Is kind of
Yeah, but
general.
that's different.
It's
You're
different,
right,
yeah.
but it's different. So the point of No Country for Old Men, which is for the listener out there, another McCarthy book that was adapted into a fantastic film, right? I actually think I like the film more than the book, which is
Yeah, so do
surprising to
I.
say. But and it even had like the Anton Chigurh character is kind of like a lesser judge. I think Harold Bloom said that in his review of the book. But in No Country for Old Men, right, the cowboy American is not. He is a facsimile of what the Glanton Gang was, right? He's lost his savage edge. He's more of a cartoon character, the
Mm,
modern cowboy, right?
yeah.
He is a costume, right? Ed Tom Bell looks the part. He looks like Ronald Reagan in the 80s, but he doesn't have the metal to destroy the world, right? So,
And the
um,
world wouldn't let him do that either, is the
yep.
thing. Yeah.
And what we're seeing on the border in Mexico with the rise of the gangs, right? With the rise of this gang violence, this sort of savagery beyond the southern border of the United States, that is creeping north, right? the cowboy cannot understand it, and out of self-preservation he just goes away. He turns tail and goes home because it's beyond his understanding. It's not beyond the understanding of someone like the judge or the kid or the Clanton gang, right? They would recognize it and be able to fight this force head on, right? But for the American, for the quintessential American cowboy, let's say, it's beyond him, and he's too old and too weak to live in the new world. So rather, so where the kid in the judge's estimation is too dangerous, let's say, to live in society, and also too damaged and too sinful, right? His sins are too great that he cannot live with normal people. So of course his end comes to him through the judge. Ed Tom Bell is too civilized. He's
Yeah.
too of society and of civilization. As much as throughout the book you're kind of led to believe that, oh, he's this last sort of bastion of masculinity. No, he's actually like the first dilettante of America, and actually if he needs to get out of the way in order for a new savage man to take his place, right?
Yeah.
And what's his name, Llewellyn Moss is more so is that next man, and though he ends up dying in No Country for Old Men, right? um Llewellyn Moss is more adept and more ready to face that threat from the South, and further generations are going to become more adept and ready for that as well.
It's interesting just meeting, you meet characters throughout your life as well, or people that maybe watched a movie or read a book and took on that character, and you'll run into quote unquote cowboys, and they drive a pickup truck and they got boots and
Oh, I mean,
everything.
Yellowstone,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
the Yellowstone meme.
Look, what are they called?
Hick lives.
Hick lips. Yeah. And that's becoming more prevalent now, right?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Because they like the aesthetic. That's
right.
what a big thing is. They like the aesthetic, but they can't deal with the identity that's supposed to actually impart.
Yeah, no, and to be fair, it is a very cool aesthetic,
Yeah.
but these days that's all that it is, and sort of by design, like the judge will allow, to kind of tie it back to the book a little bit, right? The judge, the spirit of violence, right, will allow for uh will allow for playing pretend, right, in this newly conquered land, right? Because America's no longer a desert, but rather a garden, right? So like the
Yeah.
difference between and the global South, we could say, is this encroaching force, whether it's desertification or it's a jungle, right, trying to swallow back up the garden. Because the thing about gardens is that you have to fight constantly to keep it neat and orderly and pretty, because nature is kind of ugly and disorderly and chaotic, right? And it wishes to subsume everything that is not that, right?
Yes.
So you have today people coming over the southern border, and you're seeing these border towns dealing with a lot of drug and cartel violence, right? Much like McCarthy's writing about, because that book takes place in what, like the late 70s, early 80s, right? um, and you could see then what is becoming more and more apparent now, that the the peace that was established with the closing of the West has taken a long time, but it has weakened the resolve of men, right? Uh, there's a history book that I really enjoyed called Empire of the Summer Moon. It's pretty famous. Have you read that one by chance?
Is that the Comanche one?
Yeah. The
Right?
Comanche one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the book, in Blood Meridian, they're Apaches that mostly attack, but same different. The Apache and the Comanche, very similar war styles, and actually, the Comanche like kicked the crap out of the Apache for a long
The
time.
Comanche were very adept
Oh yeah, I
riders
mean they're
and
the
warriors.
yeah no probably the most adept um, Indian tribe at warfare, right? And you have all these people, especially in Texas, right, in eastern Texas, who are trying to establish their homesteads that are just constantly under threat of Comanche attack, right? And one of the things that I kind of gripe about when it comes to the story of how the West was conquered and how like everybody brings up the Trail of Tears and how awful and smallpox blankets and stuff, and it's like no, that the Cherokee might have suffered a lot. In fact, there's actually a lot of stories about the Cherokee doing very similar things to the that the Comanche do to white settlers, right? And we can go into the morality of that if you want. I think it's kind of pointless.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I think what's more interesting is what I read recently was the reason why there was a lot of white settlers in Texas was because Mexico was inviting them there. They're like, "Hey, yeah, we want you to come farm here," and all of that. And really, they were trying to create a buffer between the natives. And Mexico's always been a mess, always has been a mess, always will be a mess. And they were just trying to prevent the Comanche from doing the raids on their people. Say, hey, we'll have these aggressive white settlers and they'll fight our war for us. And that's happened many times throughout history.
oh, definitely. And the settlers on the periphery, on the frontier of the American nation at this point are very similar to the frontiersman and the cowboy that I alluded to before, where they become too savage to live in civilization, right? And they're constantly fighting the Comanche, the Apache, whichever tribes they're at war with, and in fact, the Union Army is too big, too organized, too methodical in a lot of ways that it's like fighting gorillas, right? It's
Yeah.
very difficult to do that because they move too fast. They can disappear. They know the land better than the Union does, and eventually the Union's able to just kind of corner them, and then you get things like Wounded Knee. You get what's that battle of the creek, Bear Creek, I think, and where it just becomes slaughters, right? Uh, when there is no longer a place for them to hide, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. But the narrative for the longest time is this equal struggle between of like versus like, and in fact, actually, for the longest time, the Comanche have the upper hand in the fight against the settlers.
Oh, yeah. Uh, yeah, I like you were saying, I don't really see the point in going into the morality of the cowboy versus Indian thing. I'm sure it's been done to death by commies and the like. It's just I'm pretty fatalistic about things as well, and the people who are able to uh, take the forces of technology, whether that be the rifles and the pistols they used or industry, they're going to eventually conquer. Like they're going to conquer, and those who cannot, now they're relegated to reservations, and that's how history's always worked.
So there's one scene in the book that I really enjoy, and actually enjoy is probably the wrong word, right? I don't think there's any enjoying this book. Um, But one part that stuck out to me was the ferry crossing and the massacre there, right? The people who run this ferry, they are a mix of, you know, settlers and peaceable Indians, right? And the gang just betrays them, slaughters everybody because they want to now make money off of the ferry. They want to own this ferry, right? And you can see that this is a very different type of violence, right? The violence perpetrated against the Indians is sanctioned by the judge. It's sanctioned, and I mean, all violence is sanctioned by the judge, but kind of, but not really, right? Uh, I'll get into what I mean by that. So, the slaughter is sanctioned when it's a war, but when it's against a civilian, kind of this civilian pacified people, right? Whether it's divine intervention, whether it's karma, whatever you want to say, a divine justice, a larger Indian force is not further behind. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
have they pay for their breaking the rules. Their bloodlust is repaid in kind by a larger force of Indians, and then that's really like the halfway point of the book. The rest of the book is the kid trying to kind of wipe the dust off of his boots and like escape and live like a regular type life.
Yeah, he spends most of the book in general running away. And I'm sure there's parallels McCarthy was trying to construct in terms of he's running away from his own nature, of course. There's several people throughout the book that remark on the kid, oh, it's just who you are, you know, you're a wild dog or you will always be like this. But there is a tenderness in the boy as well, and he spares people at certain points, and he knows deep in his soul that it's wrong, I feel, but he is confronted with his own nature in being a part of this, and he can't resist coming back again and again into this into the gang. And because there's several points where people are separated and they have to get back together. I imagine that happened a lot with those kind of groups. So there is always the choice to desert, right? You don't have to keep doing this. You're doing it because you want to do it.
Yes, and that's the important thing about temptation as well, is that it is never coerced. It in fact has to be consented, and it's funny that word specifically because the uh, modern sexual politics, or you know, even modern politics in general, just really harps on consent, right? uh, as the It doesn't matter how perverted or kind of perverse or awful the act is, as long as the parties consent. That's the ultimate morality, and that's you know, actually really twisted when you dig into it, you know, because all temptation is based upon consent to be tempted, right, or to fall into the temptation.
Mm, yeah.
So I want to kind of get to the ending, because we have these two scenes at the end that really capstone the novel as a whole. The kid has grown up. He's you know, 40 odd years old in Texas, right? And he sees Holden. And actually, we haven't even discussed what Holden looks like. I believe he is described as a hairless albino giant with the proportions of an infant.
Yeah, I'll have a little notes on how he's actually described. Let me
Yeah,
see
go ahead. Yeah, no,
here.
if you have if you have
Uh,
the text.
let's see. Large, fresh, fleshy frame, a dull tallow colored face, destitute of hair and all expression. Yeah.
Yeah, so he's
Giant. he's very he's gross. Like he's gross, but also intimidating, scary. He's a scary dude for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's intimidating to look at. You don't want to look at him, but you also kind of can't help but look at him, right? And yet he's this. I mean, he's gigantic. He's probably close to 7 feet tall, right? In one of the Indian attacks, I think it's actually at the attack on the fair. He kind of does the Schwarzenegger thing where he just picks up a cannon, right? Like a small piece of field artillery, and he just has it under his arm and he's firing it on like he's an action movie star, you know. and you would think, oh wow, that's kind of unbelievable, but the actions of this man up until this point have been so unbelievable that you kind of go with it, right? And it's clear that he is supernatural.
Yeah, I think there's some dispute between critics of the book of what percentage is mythology, how much is direct, quotes from the witnesses. There's a ponderous element to this book that I really like. It's ponderous, it's mystical. You remember the one scene with the tarot cards and everything? That was pretty cool.
Expand on that, yeah.
It was that they were reading, the performer was reading the cards off to them, and it kind of was giving out a pretty negative destiny, essentially. Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is that to go back to the illusion of Satan, right? You can think of the judge, either he's Satan, or he's like the spirit of war, like the demon of war and bloodshed, right? He's some sort of demonic force, definitely, right? And the Glanton gang, the men who follow him, are his anti-disciples, you know. Like if he's like this antichrist figure, they are his disciples, and rather than allowing them to spread whatever it is that they can, he therefore has to, it always ends in their death, and it's always in this horrible, gruesome way. You know what I mean? So when he eventually meets up with the kid later in life, he alludes to this. He calls the kid the last of them, right? Something like that. The last of the gang, let's say.
It is strange that he wouldn't leave him alone. I guess I understand. It's the force of nature element to it, right?
Yeah, no, he literally can't. And the fact that the kid had kindness and mercy in him, right? More so than the other guys, even more so than, say, like Tobin, right? Who at one point was a priest. The fact that he has a bit of innocence in him allows him to live longer than the others. But the judge, they made their deal. He signed his name with the devil, right? He put his lot in with the devil, right?
Yep.
And the devil's going to collect one way or another. One day, doesn't matter when. It is foretold. It is done. There's no more agreement to be made. The kid got to have, and the worst part is the word fun is applicable. The kid got to have his fun, his adventure, right? And that there is a cost. And it's not only, and you know, whatever happens to the kid's body, you know, and his death pales in comparison to what happens after.
Yeah. There's a deconstructionist element to this point in particular, for sure. In terms of most Western stories, Eastwood-esque or otherwise, he has his quote unquote fun, like you just said, and he settles down on the prairie with a nice girl, and maybe she doesn't know all of the bad things he did. And that's a common thing in Western too, is like, oh, it catches up to you, you know, oh, guys show up again because of what you did or that kind of thing. But a lot of times they get to live happily ever after, right? And this is not that kind
Yeah, I mean, there's you know, probably the prototype for this also would be Ethan Edwards in The Searchers, right? He he was a soldier of the Confederacy. He doesn't want to sign a loyalty oath back to the Union. He goes and fights in like a Mexican war, like one of the Mexican civil wars, right? Um, Comes back home. He thinks he can live like a regular type life, and then the Comanche attack. You know, it's very much this
yeah,
the killing that these men do. You cannot leave it behind, and the great lie that they tell themselves is that the past can be put behind them, and that nothing there is no account for their actions, right? I think William Money is Eastwood's character in Unforgiven, right? He lives on a farm with his children. His wife is dead, and everyone knows him as, just this kind of old farmer, right? But
yeah.
everybody also knows the name William Money, right? Or what is it?
The old seer is a common archetype, right? Obi-Wan
Right.
Kenobi and someone like that. But
Yeah,
they did used to be a great warrior.
grittier than that, because Obi-Wan Kenobi, whatever. Like he's the old wise man. But I'm talking about the man who tries to put his past behind him, whatever that may be.
Yeah.
High Plains Drifter has an element of this. Pale Rider, the end of Josie Wales, is definitely this, where he thinks he can just kind of start living as Mr. Wilson, even though as Josie Wales he was the
Massacred a bunch of Union soldiers.
exactly. He was like the
I love that movie.
the Gray Death. Or I think they call him the Gray Rider. Or at least Ten Bears does, right? Yeah, I love that movie too. I did a thread on that.
There's an interesting parallel with all the things we're talking about too, in terms of the American Civil War, in that the North is an industrial power, and it conquers the South and brings it back into the fold. And it is kind of just as the West is tamed, so is the old aristocracy is tamed.
Definitely. Yeah, the North, and that's the thing too, is that the North, you could say that the Northeast sort of Puritanism that has spread across America, right, and that now across the world, and whatever sins and whatever ends were justified, or whatever means were justified for that end, is never really the end, right? And that we're now living through a great accounting, let's say. The chickens are coming home to roost, whatever metaphor you want to use for the good time is stopped, and now somebody's got to clean up after the party. Somebody's got to pay for all the broken shit.
Yeah, there's a tab to be paid literally.
Yeah. That's better. Yeah, there's a tab.
Yeah, and I worked as a bartender for a while, and there's a lot of people, they love ordering shots. They love letting the good times roll. And then when you throw the tab down for everybody to look at, all of a sudden, people start darting out the side.
They're doing the math in their head, like, well, I only did this, and that. And it's like, you reap what you sow, and the last 100 or so years of American history, maybe 150, right? There has been much sowing, and there is to be a reaping.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it seems like we're going to be the ones to pony up, but doesn't mean we have to pay for everything. So, us personally, that is.
Yes. So Max, I wanted to ask what other points you had in your notes, we can cover those and then probably get out of here. I don't know. I feel like I think we did a good job of covering the basics, and one could go very deep into
Yeah.
this book,
Mhm.
and many better men than I have, and I'll probably link some good lectures in the show notes below. But I want to keep these kind of general, kind of fun, go into rabbit holes where they pop up, and yeah.
The one other scene I wanted to cover, which I really enjoyed, was let's see, Tobin. Wasn't it Tobin protecting the kid at near the end where they kind of then goes off and does his own thing? Is the priest?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's probably symbolic for God looking out for him, even though he's an ex-priest. He's still an agent of, supposed to be, he's like a fallen agent of God, but he's still helping keep the kid a chance for salvation, I think.
Right. And
Is what,
even there's a point later where the kid tries to find Tobin and can't, right? He's kind of too far gone at a certain point that even a disgraced holy man is too good for him, right? And
yeah,
this is right around the time that that Toadvine is also killed, right? Or yeah, he's hanged for being a scumbag outlaw,
yeah.
right? Him and another guy in the gang. So we're starting to see, and it's funny too. Tobin, I don't think we ever learned Tobin's fate, right?
I don't think we did. No.
It's possible that he of the men who escape, or who escape the slaughter, right? He is able to live a normal type life because he has that foundation as a man of God, right? But then also later, the judge says, "No, kid, you're the last one." So one imagines what horrors befell Tobin before the judge got to the kid.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's yeah. I think we did a good job of covering everything. Really enjoyed this, TR. Thanks for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, I do want to say the line at the end where he says he dances and he screams that he will never die is just
He's playing a fiddle,
yeah,
right?
no, he's
I think that's actually a tarot card, like the devil playing the fiddle. I could be wrong, but there's
well,
definitely
there's
like,
a few things. I mean, even what do you call it? There's the Charlie Daniels song, "Devil Came Down to Georgia," right? There's the Faust play, or the Faust. It's sort of like a the Faust play where the devil tempts Faust, and he's in the guise of Mephistopheles there. But that play, before it was, when it was performed in America. Actually, have you seen Tombstone?
yeah, I've seen Tombstone.
Yeah. So that when the performer or when the performance is going on, they're doing Faust, and you can hear the fiddle being played in the background, right? And the song, the theme to Faust, let's say the musical theme to Faust is sort of this off kilter, distressed fiddle, right? So I'd have to do more research on it, but yeah, there's definitely you're right. There's something there to that.
There's some mythology going on there, which is pretty cool. Yeah, and anyone who's heard a fiddle that's out of tune in person or has some kind of issue with it, it's very unpleasant. Like it plays still, but it's doesn't sound like
It has that
it hurts your
distressed.
ear. Yeah.
Yeah, it has that distressed resonance to it. Yeah, okay. So I just wanted to bring that up, and yeah, Max, why don't you tell the people how they can support your work? I'll make sure to link WBS Apparel all over the place, and maybe a few pictures of people wearing shirts.
Yeah, make sure to check us out at WBSapparel.com if you'd like to grab some merch. You can always contact us on the website. There's a contact for merchandising partners, or if you're on X, follow me on X and DM me. That's how I do most of my communication. Happy to bring on new merchandising partners. Anybody who's want to monetize their audience or has a good idea for merch, we've been really successful with our partnership program. So yeah, just hit me up.
All right. Yeah. And I co-sign on that. We've been trying to maybe do some double dealer stuff, but like I said earlier, we're not there yet. But as soon as we are, I know that Max has some really cool ideas for us. If you're a member of the Old Glory Club, or if you know their work, they've got some really great stuff for them. You can get your Nutcranker t-shirts through WBS if you're a Dan Baltic respecter like I am. And yeah, no, I love the work that you guys are doing. I'm so glad that I could have you on to discuss one of my favorite books.
Thank you, TR. It was a pleasure.
Yep. And if you made it this far, just want to say thank you, listener. If you want to support the Double Dealer, you can get our magazines. Issue 12 is out now. You can also become a paid subscriber on Substack. Yeah, I mean, if you like what we're doing and you want to support us, those are the best ways to do it. I don't know how to end podcasts, so I will just say insert ending here.